Howdy folks, Brian Cusco here at Triple B, and today we are again back at the Arlington show. As I mentioned last week, we're going to be doing probably at least 3 or 4, maybe even 5 more interviews here at Arlington, as many as we can squeeze in before the show is over. And today we've got Mr. Warren Booth, who is a PhD and a very well-studied and accomplished scientist with all kinds of different research, all kinds of different stuff with genetics, and we're going to just pick his brain for a little bit and just kind of talk to him about snake stuff too, and like his idea on feeding that he shares with Vin Russo, which is something that I kind of follow myself, the lighter feeding and not getting the snakes too big, and we'll kind of talk about why and get down to the physiology or the biology of why that's important and how it could maybe help you, whether it's a hobby or especially a business, to maybe follow some protocol when it comes to feeding that's closer to that. So without further ado, here's Mr. Warren Booth. You're watching Triple B TV. So this is the first time we've actually met in person. Well, we met yesterday for a brief spell out front. But I first knew of you from our mutual friend, Mr. Dave Dornsife.
Dave Dorn, yeah. Dave's a really good friend of mine.
Yeah, Dave is a fantastic human being.
Yes.
Actually, one of my first shows I went to, we ended up meeting up and like staying in the same room together.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, I think he told me about that. Yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah, with my father.
Yeah, I speak to Dave probably every day.
Yeah.
And he just recently sold the majority of his collection.
I didn't know that.
So he's down to, he's just keeping his 6 Papuan pythons at the moment and maybe a couple of colubrids, but he sold all of his boas, all of his ball pythons, all gone.
Really?
Yeah.
Man, he had built that nice room there. The like the stand-up tub where you can stand up the bathtub type of thing.
He built all that and he modified it a few times, and then just a couple of months ago he said, "Yeah, I'm selling it. I'm done."
Well, I guess I'll talk to him about that.
Yeah. But,
I'm trying to get a puppy from him when he has his Ridgeback. Because my wife is super about Ridgeback.
Really?
Like she wants to
he's got 2 nice ones.
Yeah.
Really. They're like his children. That's what he sends pictures of, those and his goat and his horses.
Yeah, moving to Arizona was a good move for him.
Yeah, I think so. I think he likes it.
He's shining out there.
Yeah,
man.
definitely. Yeah, I don't think he was ever that happy in Chicago, so.
Yeah.
That move seemed to be. And he did a crazy move. Like, I did that as well. When I lived in North Carolina, I lived in Raleigh. And when I moved to Tulsa, it was a 4-day trip, but I had 120 snakes to bring. 6 of them were gravid. It was just a crazy move. Bring them into hotel rooms every night. I don't fancy that again.
Yeah. You guys both did something like that crazy. He
did the quick turnaround, but he drove and then dropped them off and then drove back again. Yeah, that would be nuts. No thanks.
So you are a pretty intelligent guy. Well, you're a PhD. Yes,
Yeah.
You're a doctor. You put out papers. You do a lot of research with rattlesnakes.
So my lab is it's mainly based around understanding urban evolution, so how organisms adapt and evolve in urban settings. So we use insects mainly as model systems, pest insects, to study things like insecticide resistance evolution and dispersal patterns. But I do a lot of work on snakes as well. It started off a number of years ago. I developed markers for boa constrictors, and then Jeff Ronnie called me up and said that he had a friend who had a litter of boas, and I tested them. It turned out that they were parthenogenetic. At that point, they wanted to just know a paternity test to find out who was the father, but there was no father. And from then, it kind of exploded. I don't know how many papers we've got out now, but we've shown parthenogenesis in a lot of different snake species. Just recently, we had a paper in king cobras. So we showed parthenogenesis in king cobras, but it's evolving away from just documenting these cases. And now we're using it to understand a lot more about the genomics of snakes. So using it to understand sex chromosome evolution, using it to understand what happens to things like venom whenever a parthenogen is produced. And then now in our recent paper, it's more about what is happening at the chromosome level whenever parthenogenesis occurs, because they retain some levels of heterozygosity, and it's kind of where it's retained. So, that's all kind of hobby research. I've never applied for funding for that kind of stuff. I just do it for fun. I'm doing a lot of work now for Nick Mutton for his new carpet python book, and Nick and Ryan Young and I are both working on a big scrub python project. We've just done work for Zoo Atlanta on Gila monsters. We do have some wild rattlesnake work that's going on, kind of studying long-term sperm storage and sexual selection. But it's hobby research. It's not stuff that we apply for funding for,
Wow.
And the fact that I've got 120 snakes at home kind of ties the projects together, ties the things together. So.
And you're also a father.
Yes.
How do you?
3-year-old and a 6-year-old.
How on earth are you?
Well, I don't sleep a lot, so I think that's where it starts with. Yeah, it's crazy. The kids are awesome. I love my kids, and they kind of get as much into the reptiles as they can. You know, we've got some redfoot tortoises, so they love the redfoots, and they've watched baby boas being born and pythons hatching, so they're really into it. And yet it's funny, I said to my daughter last year, I asked her if she wanted to have a snake or a lizard as a pet in her bedroom. She's like, no, it's fine. It's like, okay, it's fine. Another tortoise should be all over, but not a snake or a lizard. Yeah.
Tortoises get a real good. Look at this guy's shirt over here. Ninja Turtles. Turtles get. They're like the happy, friendly animal in the.
They just waddle around, do their thing.
Yeah.
They feed. Yeah, they're great. I love them.
Yeah, me too. Lizards and snakes don't get that.
Well, that's true.
Same thing.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Yeah, they're not as personable.
Yeah.
You know, the tortoise will walk up to you and kind of scratch its chin a little bit and stuff. And the fact we can put them outside in the summer, you know, they can live outside. So the kids like that, you know. So I like it. I think they're fantastic.
And they're not going to go climbing over any fences or anything.
No, definitely not. And they're not sulcatas, so they're not going to dig underneath anything either. So they're fun. Yeah.
Well, dude, that's. I knew you were doing a lot of things. I didn't realize it was that much at the same time.
Yeah, it's constant. It has to be. All right, so to keep a lab running, we need to have multiple projects going on at the same time, because it costs a lot of money. You know, for me to hire a postdoc is going to cost me $75,000 or $80,000 a year to pay their salary and fringe benefits and stuff. And then the genomic sequencing work that we do, it's tens of thousands of dollars every couple of months. So if we don't have funded projects that are driving that, then we can't do the other stuff on the side. You know, we wouldn't be able to do any of the Parthenogenesis work if we didn't have that other work that was bringing in the money to run the lab. So it's you know, you have to look at it like a business. You know, if I stop bringing in research grants, then there's no research going on in the lab. There's no way to fund that kind of work.
And how does that work? So you got hobby research going on, but you have the funded things happening. How does that work, being able to incorporate that funding into allowing the hobby research to happen?
Well, it allows...
how's that? Is that like the people giving the grants, for example? Like, they don't have a problem with hobby research happening?
It's the people that are, you know, that helps pay for the graduate students and the postdoc, and they can do the work on the side as well. So, and then there's, you know, whenever I'm sequencing something, it might be 96 samples that I'm sequencing, but I only need to sequence 80 samples, so I can add some to it, so like the snake stuff, and that helps kind of cover that there. And in the end of the day, it's all about advancing knowledge, you know, advancing science, and that's exactly what it's doing as well.
I'm super interested about the resistance to pesticides with the insects. I'd really be, because I know the pesticides have had a huge negative impact on our food and just...
It can do, yeah. So we work mainly on pest insects. So bed bugs are one of the big systems that we work with. So that's obviously a major urban pest insect. And we've shown that, you know, in the 1950s or 60s, they introduced DDT. It's like 1948. And within 4 years, bed bugs started showing resistance to the DDT. And since then, they've evolved resistance to other pyrethroid insecticides. So now most of the insecticides that you see that are pyrethroid-based will do nothing to any of bed bugs. You know, we've got a large population study going on where we sampled samples across the US and across the world. And we did that 10 years ago. We've repeated it this year, and this year we find no populations that are susceptible to the insecticide. So they have to find new ways to kind of control these kind of pest insects. That's kind of the bread and butter stuff that we do at the lab, you know, and like understanding how those populations then spread, if they interbreed, where they're being introduced from, where they're going to.
How did you get to where you're at today? Like what
was the path? Well, I did my degree was genetics. I did that in Ireland, and then I did a PhD in evolutionary genetics in the same lab. At that point, I was working on small mammal kind of projects. From there, in 2006, I moved to Raleigh, North Carolina to do a postdoctoral research position. I was there for about 7 years. And then in 2012, I moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma to take up the faculty position. So I've been there 9 years. So I've gone through tenure. So I'm now an associate professor.
That's awesome, man. So was it work that brought you over from Ireland then?
It was work, I just finished my PhD. And I was looking for a postdoctoral position, and I saw some in France that I was interested in. I think there was one in England I was interested in, and just by chance I applied for one in North Carolina. And because I used to go to the Outer Banks every year with my dad, and my then girlfriend, now wife. We would go to the Outer Banks to a friend's beach house in Kitty Hawk. So it was weird that I was actually there whenever I got an email to ask if I wanted to go for an interview. And I was like, yeah, I can do that, but I'm in the US right now. It's like, well, you're literally 3 hours away. So I got in the car, drove over, interviewed, and got the position. And the plan was originally just to be here for 3 years, do that position, then move back to Ireland or somewhere in Europe. But after 3 years, I was really enjoying it. We wrote another research grant, and it got funded. So that kept me funded for another 3 years, maybe 4. And at that point, my girlfriend, then fiance, then wife, moved over. And then we thought we'll be here for 4 years, and then we'll move back to Ireland or the UK, and then that didn't happen.
It seems like you're kind of here to stay.
Yeah, we're here. You know, we've got 2 kids that have got tri-citizenship. You know, they're American passports, they got British passports, and they got Irish, so they can travel wherever they want to go. And then my wife and I, we're applying for our citizenship this year. So yeah, we like it here. I can't imagine moving back again.
This is it's completely related. Ireland happens to be my favorite country that I've ever been to,
cool.
Because of people.
It's a wonderful place.
Yeah.
And I love it more now that I'm not there, in terms of I go back and I'm much more of a tourist. But cities like Dublin are just incredible. It's one of my favorite places on the planet. And the people are incredibly friendly.
Yeah.
And the scenery is beautiful.
Yeah, we were fortunate to go around most of the island. Yeah. We started in Dublin. We ended up at the Causeway.
Yeah, Jan's Causeway is great.
Yeah.
And again, it's something that when you live there, you don't appreciate it. You know, you don't appreciate the Bushmills distillery right beside it. You don't appreciate.
I locked my wife in the car at the Bushmills distillery for an hour while I was inside on accident.
It's great. Yeah, the Jan's Causeway is wonderful. You know, I'm excited. We're probably going to go back next summer, and the kids, you know, at that point will be 7, 5. So they should get more out of it. You know, we've been back a couple of times with them, but they've been pretty much too young to really take anything in. But yeah, I'm looking forward to bringing them back next year, hopefully next summer.
I wanted to talk about something that may be specific, but I didn't have anything particularly in mind. How do you feed your snakes? Like, what's your
everything. It's all frozen thawed. So yeah, I'm pretty basic with that. Frozen thawed. Most of the substrate that I use is just packing paper from Lowe's. I use cocoa blocks for like rainbow boas and stuff like that, my tree boas. But I feed everything very sparingly, so the boas might get fed, the adult boas might get fed 9 or 10 times a year. The tree boas get fed about every 3 weeks, 4 weeks, so it's kind of the same. So, you know, the fact that I got 120 or something snakes, it's very easy to manage whenever you've got that kind of regime for feeding and rearing and so on.
I think that's a good topic then. That's kind of what I want to talk. It seems like most people overfeed their animals.
I think that's been, people are now realizing that.
Now realizing that maybe we've been feeding too much overall.
Yeah. And like I've been preaching that for a long time, and Vin Russo's the same. And Vin and I talked about it, I don't know, 8 years ago, we were talking about people overfeeding snakes, because Vin and I follow a very similar kind of feeding regime for our boas. I don't feed anything from kind of October through to February, November through to February, and then I feed kind of a little bit of heavy feeding to start off with, and then I thin it right down to once every 3 or 4 weeks for the adults. The babies I feed every kind of 10 days, and I keep feeding them sparingly throughout the winter, but not so much. And my boas breed every 2 years. They produce really good litters. I don't want really big snakes, you know, and I don't want animals that are obese, and I want animals that are long-lived. So I've got some of the boas that I've got that I'm breeding are 25 years old, 26 years old, and they're still producing litters, very, very healthy. And they've produced, for me, maybe 7 or 8 litters so far. You know, there's an idea that some people have said that boas have got 3 good litters in them and that's it. I totally disagree with that. I think it's people are overfeeding them, and that results in early death and results in a low fecundity. I think if you feed them correctly, I think they can live a long time. The oldest boa that I had was back in Raleigh, and it was donated to me, and it was 48 whenever it was donated to me. And I had her for 4 years, then I donated it to a reptile rescue. So it would have been 52 years old at that point.
Wow.
And the guy got it as a 3-foot import 48 years previous. And he fed it 1 squirrel a month. He shot a squirrel in his backyard, and he fed it a squirrel every month for his life. And that animal was maybe 6 feet long and really lean. It was fantastic. It was absolutely fantastic. So I fed it 1 rat every month in the 4 years that I owned it, and it just thrived, you know.
Did you always feed that way? Was it?
No, whenever I started out a long time ago, I did the, you know, feed every Friday or Saturday or whatever it was. But over time, just from reading and from thinking about what animals do in the wild, it just made me think that maybe we were doing things a little bit not correct, right? The fact you're seeing big boas with small heads, I thought that's not normal. So I started reducing the feeding, and then I started doing a lot more research into kind of what happens physiologically whenever snakes feed. So So like boas and pythons, we know that, and pit vipers, whenever they feed, within 4 hours you get this upregulation of all these genes the heart will increase in size by about 50%. The intestines remodel. The blood becomes really thick with plasma. Total change, and that lasts for about 2 weeks. And then at the end of 2 weeks, those genes switch off and they go back down to normal. The heart returns to its normal size and so on. And I thought, well, if we're feeding it every 7 days, then you're not allowing it to go into that deregulation phase or, to kind of that shutdown phase. And I thought, physiologically, that's got to be pretty stressful on an animal. Things like corn snakes and king snakes are not like that. You have to feed them frequently. They're active snakes. But whenever you think about a boa or a python or a pit viper, they tend to be sit and wait for their food, and they sit for a long time. So, for example, I was in Costa Rica maybe 8 years ago, and on the first day we found a small eyelash viper sitting on a frond, on a leaf, and 9 days later it was still sitting in the exact same position on that leaf. It hadn't eaten. And then on the final day, it was gone, so it obviously got a meal and it left. But it just sat there stationary, it didn't move, and I took pictures of it every day, and it was in the exact same position. So if you think it's sitting there for at least 9 or 10 days, probably there longer, and finally it either got to eat or it didn't, and it's gone somewhere else, but it's not feeding every couple of days. Whereas you look at something like a racer, or a king snake, or a corn snake, they're always on the move, so they're always hunting. And they require that increased feeding. I think people probably still feed them too much, but I think feeding them every 7 to 10 days is more healthy. But boas and pythons, people massively overfeed them. There's no reason why they should be. And then they complain about them being short-lived, or I don't even think about breeding snakes until they're 6 or 7 years old at times. And they're, as I say, I've got ones that are 25 years old at the moment that are still breeding, and they're doing great.
I think that's probably what Lisa is, but people want them to breed sooner. And
I
think
think
if they get bigger, then they'll
and it doesn't necessarily help the animal.
Right.
You're just putting on a lot of fat onto the animal. I don't think that necessarily is good for breeding, and that's why you might get 2 or 3 good litters out of it, but then they just turn to crap after that. So I tend to feed sparingly. I'm not in any rush. It's not a business for me. It's just a hobby. So I feed sparingly, and I'm not in any rush to breed them.
Well, even if it was not a hobby and a business, it would seem to make more sense if you followed that protocol, because you have an animal that's going to live and produce for you for many, many more years.
Well, exactly. So you think about, if it is a business, then think about what you're going to get out of that in terms of value, in terms of price for offspring. You're going to get more offspring over time, and you're going to be feeding less, so you're reducing your costs as well. So probably, but with businesses, people just want to rush into it very fast. They want to be breeding within a couple of years, and that's it. They're not willing to wait. So you had a little bit of foresight to be able to say, right, well, here's the way I breed animals is to say, right, I want to produce this animal at some point in time, so I'll start producing the crosses to get towards that. And that might be 3 generations before I get to it, and it might be 12 years or 15 years, but that's kind of the way I plan it. I don't pair things randomly. It's always towards a certain goal. And I work towards that, and very often what I'll do is, like the double hets, the triple hets, I'll just wholesale them out. Instead of sitting on them and trying to sell them, I'll wholesale them to different wholesalers. They'll send the males to one wholesaler, and they'll send the females to another, because then they're never coming back again to cross. And then I'll keep the animals that I want and work with those. So it's more fun for me to do it that way.
It's cool, man. That's what it should be. I think it's fun.
And I'm really the stuff that really excites me now are the tree boas, the emerald tree boas and the Sanzinia. So I work a lot with those, and they're a lot of fun. Whenever you produce those, and the ones that I've produced recently, I haven't sold. People hit me up for them, and I've no interest in selling them. I'm happy to let them raise up, and they'll become breeding stock in 6 or 7 years' time. They're cool, and they look great. They're fun to have in my office at work. So
it's awesome, dude. Well, it's great to sit down and talk with you, man.
Thank you. It's good to finally meet.
Yeah,
it's been a while. So
I know. It has been a while, because that was like literally my first show with Dave, and I remember hearing about you. I reached out and like, are you gonna be at this show? And
because I was looking at your text message a couple of days ago. I was like, what's the one above it? It was like 4 years ago.
2017.
Yeah, that was funny. Yeah, because I think it was this show. It was the Arlington show. I think you asked if I was going to.
Yeah,
it was Tinley. It was Tinley. Yeah, because I normally would go to Tinley. I haven't gone as much.
I think you were probably one of your kids was just being born at that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think it was my son was just born. I think I remember that. The message was like, if I try to go to this, my wife's going to kill me. And I haven't been back to Tinley since then. So hopefully, whenever I know they're doing the St. Louis show, I'm going to try and get to that there, and I'll try and get up to whatever the next Tinley, whenever it happens, I'll try and get up to. It's always a fun show.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for taking a moment to come and talk to us, Warren. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, it's
Thank
fun.
you. Well, a big thank you to Warren for coming on, taking some time with us here at the show. Tonight, the day this video came out, we're going to be doing a Q&A with Warren on the Zoom call with our Patreon community. There's a link down in the description if you want to check that out. We do these Patreon calls, Zoom calls, every single Tuesday evening. And we'd love to see you guys on there. It's a great time. And yeah, until next week, we're going to be getting on somebody else here at the Arlington Show. In fact, I'm going to call somebody right now, see if we can get them on. But we'll see you next week here on Triple B TV. Y'all take care. Got a lot more you clearly have a lot more knowledge and information to offer out there. So we have time on a Tuesday to do a Q&A with like our group sometime. Like,
Yeah, take time, just let me know.
Okay.
I'm on academic sabbatical at the moment, so basically my time is pretty free.
Let's let me look at what I'm just gonna pull up the calendar to see what Tuesday might work for you. We generally do them Tuesday evening about like 6 or 7 p.m. Pacific time. So
Sure.
it'd be like
Just let me know.
Is Tulsa still on
Central.
Central? Okay.
Yeah.
So it'd be like how long are you on sabbatical for?
Until the end of the semester. That ends I think next week, but I've got the whole summer as well.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, that'll work fine for me. Just let me know.
Okay. Maybe like we say I don't know if you can plug it in your calendar at this point, but like Tuesday at 9 your time, the 11th.
Yeah, we should. Yeah, that should work.
May 11th will work.
Yeah, just send me a message.
Okay. I'll make sure you guys sit in there.
Awesome,
man.
Cool.
Thank you very much, dude.
No worries, man.
I appreciate it. Oh no, I'll be here. I'm in Flat on Monday. Yeah. 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 Just so you can just walk right across. Absolutely. Yeah. Most definitely. Thanks, Warren. Yes, absolutely. Let me hang out. Thank you again. Hey Dave, one sec. I need to get my, I'm doing my intro and outro real quick.